We're going on the air, and we are live. Our guest is a filmmaker. He's responsible for Vampire Cheerleaders Must Die. He co-hosts the Sean and Bill Show podcast, performs stand-up comedy, creates the Game Nights web series, and now he's kickstartering an RPG that's a parody of fantasy role-playing, Beasties and Bygones. Please welcome to the show, Javier Palenzuela. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Cool. Now, I was talking yesterday to one of our correspondents on the show, Tim Hannon, who covers Savage Worlds for us, and I
hmm
described what the game is based on what I saw on the Kickstarter, and he said, "Oh, so this is the game that I've been waiting my entire life to play." So for our listeners and stuff, please describe what your game is and why they may or may not have realized they've been waiting for this their whole lives.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I've been playing this game my whole life, so it's just the opposite there. Beasties and Bygones is basically if you love South Park and you have a sense of humor, especially if it's an edgy or raunchy sense of humor, Beasties and Bygones is an attempt to basically, create this world that you could just parody or satire anything. And so, yes, it is comedy, but it's basically an opportunity to, have fun and play these games that uh, you know, every game sort of that I've ever played eventually ended up in some kind of like, there was humorous moments in there, and sometimes, and that's natural and that's fine. But if that's not enough, and you want to have, like if you want to laugh and you want to just, be strange and be weird and just go there, then Beasties and Bygones is for you. And what it is essentially a world that was cloned from Earth, and that's why we called it Alti Earth, because back before the Age of Reason on Earth, there was a wizard, a powerful wizard, and he was an imaginator. And his name was Gary Gygaxian. Sorry, Gareth. My mistake. For lawsuit purposes. And so he, was trying to save. He started realizing that people aren't believing in magic anymore as technology and science starts coming around. So, and he realizing that all these magical creatures and all these mythologies were slowly dying. He found this spell and cloned Earth and created this new Earth that's all magical. And with that, he ended up sucking in all the magical creatures and all the mythologies and from Earth into this new alter Earth that is kind of low tech and high fantasy. And well, during that cloning process, something happened, and now all of the monsters are kind of screwed up and wacky and things. Kind of like cloning a clone or something. So instead of a chupacabra and a Sasquatch, they got merged together into the Chupa Sasquatch and other things like that, vampires and mimepires. And so it's just a playground for you to learn, and also just a guide to inserting comedy into your gaming. Let's say you're not into the whole hardcore gaming thing, but you're curious about how you can interject more comedy into your game. We're gonna have chapters and little and tools and optional rules that'll help you just spice up your regular either 3.5 or Dungeon World or any system really, if you use some of the concepts.
Yeah, I was curious about that, of using the actual main games that you're parodying for the rule set of Dungeon World and 3.5. Uh, do you have actual rules that you've added to it to reflect this world in this setting, or is it just by changing the races and the things and the stories into there, but keeping the mechanics the same?
Well, generally, I'm keeping the mechanics the same because people love the mechanics, and I believe what we bring to the table is more of just the content. But I did adapt the rule systems to my world. So saying that, the basic mechanics are the same, but there are some optional rules, and that's why I kind of include optional rules because I realize that sometimes people just want to play what they know. But at the same time, like in our world, the thing that corrupted Earth was what they call the taint, and it's this the taint from the south, and it's corrupting everything on Earth, on Alti Earth, that is. And so we do have a mechanic that basically magic has this. It's sort of like wild magic from 3.5 D&D, only a raunchier, edgier, wilder magic. With higher stakes if you fail, and higher success if you fail.
Such as, what are some of your favorites on failure?
So, for example, like we have one where, basically, okay, here's an interesting thing. We have a Jester class, and it's available right now actually for free on our Kickstarter. And the Jester has a move or an ability that what he can do is he has something called a targeted AoE, which I call basically anybody who, if it's he has two types of major moves, a pratfall or a wordplay. So if he does pratfall, that's physical comedy, and so anybody who can see him is his targeted, what I call audience, or his area of effect. But then within that target of who he can affect, he chooses who he wants to make laugh and thus take the effect. And if he fails, then if he sort of moderately succeeds, maybe one or two people that he like the spell could heal you, it could hurt you. But if depending on how you fail, you could accidentally target people you don't intend to. So let's say the orc laughs at your joke when he wasn't supposed to, as well, and gets healed. Or the orc who was attacked gets attacked, but your friend nearby laughed at your joke as well, so he actually also will take damage. And if you fail completely, then maybe everybody who you didn't target at all is now takes the effect of the spell.
Very nice.
To show that comedy's subjective, also.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
So by going with a 3.5 as a system in here, do you use miniatures in this, or is this theater of the imagination type thing?
I think for Dungeon World it's definitely theater of the imagination, but you can always apply. For 3.5, I think I'd like to keep this miniature system in there, but again, I'm going to leave. It's not going to be reliant completely. You know how 3.5, it's kind of, you could take it or leave it. Now fourth, you got to take it almost.
Because it would just be fun to see a Jester mini or to see a Garden No mini on the table,
Oh, well, and we're working towards that too, because all this art that we're commissioning to make these creatures a reality, we're gonna at some point we're working towards having, at the very least, cardboard cutouts that you could download and print, and hopefully down the line it would be great. And by the way, there are some cool miniatures out there as it is, and I found some replacement miniatures for a lot of these creatures that would take little to no modding. And so yeah, I agree with you. On 3.5, it would be fun to. And some of the monsters we created, I would just love to see a miniature of, like, instead of the beholder, we have the behinder. It's kind of a butt that floats with little butts on the stalks, and he has different, like, gas and matter effects that come out of there. And so I would love to see a miniature of that. I mean, we're getting a guy. Somebody's drawing it up now. So I mean, here's the thing: like, we're gonna take all these classic monsters and classes from Greek, North, and that's why cloning the whole world and the way we created it allows us to come up down the line with, for example, Atlantis exists in Alti-Earth. Why? Because it was magical. It got transferred over. So now we can have an Atlantis source book, or we can go into the mythology. We can parody. Anything can be lampooned this way. We can parody Chinese mythology because the area of China is populated by all the mythologies that existed in China. So we keep the same geographical space, but we can play with all these different mythologies and cultures and really ruin them almost.
How do you handle the universe? I could see that you could go into a very kind of almost realistic way as far as how physics work, or you could even take it into how in Bugs Bunny physics works, to where you can run off a cliff until you realize, oh, you're making an intelligence check that, oops, I shouldn't be able to be doing that. How do you handle the physics of the reality with the taint?
Well, I think that the best, personally, some of the best, funniest comedy is played for straight. So that's kind of what we're hoping. For one thing, I think, again, this is more like a suggestion, but if the GM, for example, could take everything very seriously, I mean, even if it's an encounter with dingle fairies, I mean, if you could take it and you could, like, it's all about, like, delivery, the face, especially when you're delivering this crazy world. So you're almost like, you're the storyteller, so the narrator, if you could have this seriousness to it, it would add another level. And then also, I think that I'd like to leave physics the way it is, but there's the magical element, and that's why I like taint, because you can have some of that. In other words, like, an anvil could fall out of the sky and land on your enemy's head, and that's because of the taint, but it's not controllable. See, none of this, and people can die. So that way, there's otherwise, I believe that it can't last. I'm giving the opportunity to have even a campaign. And again, I realize how ludicrous that could even be to play a weekly game of this. But if you
it's challenging. I've tried to do a tune. I've tried to do Paranoia, and just lucky to get through 3 sessions on it before everybody kills each other off.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm trying to I'm trying to learn from all the mistakes out there. Like Castle Greyhawk, for example. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn from all of the things that I studied tune and I studied Paranoia, and tune for me is great, but that's what I think it was missing for me is if you don't tell if you mess with the physics so much, then the players almost can't relate. And then so it's like The Office is what I'm trying to go for, something where, like, as
Hmm.
ridiculous as it is, try and take it as serious as you can, because your character's life, and also especially in Dungeon World, because it's a dangerous world. Now in the 3.5, there's still a very dangerous world, but you could probably take a lot of hits before you die. I think that at the end of the day, if you want to have like a complete madcap, then you can amp up the taint. But if you
Okay.
want to keep it down to to be also I believe that like use the taint sparingly would be helpful, because then you don't want you want the unexpected to stay unexpected. If you do the unexpected too much, then it's expected.
Yeah, makes sense. We were talking before we started recording, and you're saying how this was born because of the sessions that you were running, where the players just went off the tracks, and your carefully made stories. You might as well just throw the script over your shoulder, as the players just kept going ludicrous, and that really speaks volumes for you as a GM to be able to just go with that and embrace the madness on that. Does it really take a stand-up comedy background or taking improv classes to be a good GM of this kind of game or even a player of this game?
I don't think so. I think obviously it wouldn't hurt. I honestly think just having a sense of humor is the biggest thing. I would not recommend this game to people who, I don't know, take themselves very seriously, or 'cause you could get offended, and I don't really want to offend people. I just want to have fun. But I do agree with you that it's possible, but I think that most of the players that I've played with growing up, they had wanted to have fun. They didn't want to like destroy my game. It just so happened that they
Yeah.
did. and and I, at the end of the day, once I stopped taking myself too seriously, that's what happened. Then I started realizing I'm having fun and laughing too, and so that's worth something. And so why
We're playing these games to have fun. Why would we deny that?
Right, exactly. Run with it. And once I started running with it, I started realizing, well, I can actually be, there's some seriousness to this insanity, which is why I love South Park as a good example, or Mad Magazine, or National Lampoon. But Mad Magazine is a pretty good example. But I think South Park is great because they take down societies, they attack society, and that's what I also want this game to be. It's not just, so if you have something to say, I'm going to give you the tools to write an adventure that will have the players in a somewhat of a philosophical debate with the enemy through their actions, not on what they think. Everybody will be able to weigh in, and so you'll almost be able to tackle taboo subjects like censorship. The Tower of Decency, the Ivory Tower of Decency, is a adventure that's coming out this week. We've been working on it to try and make sure it's perfect, and it's coming
Cool.
along so well. But it's basically about this town fighting, this tower of wizards who became totalitarianistic, or totalitarianism, or whatever. But basically, they ended up realizing that, you know, they want to control people's. They want to censor the town. So, out of fear from having their children corrupted, they cast this spell on the whole town that basically, now no matter where you are, even if you're in your own home, these 7 words, if you ever say them, they will be magically bleeped. So it's a protection from words spell, because words are dangerous. Also he cast a to try and just protect his children. He cast a protection from flesh, because people's ankles were aplenty. Naked ankles running around, which God bless. That would be crazy. But he had a problem with it, so he cast the spell, and what happens is the players come across this town and they realize, as they're talking to NPCs, that like many of the words are being bleeped, or they're coming up with strange weird words that don't exist just to cover up their curses. And come to find out about these wizards, and the players will be able to choose, what side am I on? I mean, do I really want? Do I believe that the town is in an extreme kind of situation? Do I I understand where the guy's coming from. He doesn't want his kids to hear cursing and all this stuff. But at what point does it become, hey, what about adults? And so that's why I like this adventure as a perfect sort of quick start adventure for people to get to know Beasties and Bygones, because it kind of represents us. We're just saying, hey, I know this isn't for everybody, and I know that comedy is subjective, and so, but at the same time, we think this is funny, and we hope some other people do too. And we're gonna give you the opportunity, gay marriage, any subject that you think that you've never seen in D&D, or any other role-playing game, because no publisher in their right mind would write a subject. We have an adventure called the Temple of Excremental Evil.
I was telling people about that.
And that's just why because it's funny and because nobody's done it. Like I mean, so we have Dingle Fairies, like I said, the Behinder, so it's all just good. And the truth is, like, why is duty such a horrible thing? To be honest with you, like everybody does it, everybody poops. That's why there's a book.
Hmm.
I think there should be a movie. Everybody poops the movie. I would watch
In
that.
3D.
Yeah. I want proof. I'm not sure everybody poops. Documentary. But so and I realize it's very. Oh
Han went away.
no! I think Han was offended.
No, the cat kind of bumped into Han. Oh well.
Well, anyway, and that on that note, carbon is poop essentially, and cats poop. So
Yeah. They're an illustration, Mickey. Thank you.
exactly.
I was thinking of the decency thing. Do you have a class that is or spellcasters are like required to use those 7 words, kind of like a gangster rap bard or something?
Well, that's inspired. That's great.
I was just wondering if you had that, because that would be fun to have one where it specifically targets and makes a class have to really struggle with its abilities.
Yeah, well, I like
that would really challenge that.
Absolutely. Well, here's another thought. Like towards the end on Act 3 of this adventure, like if you don't, towards the end of what's going on, like the NPCs are going to have a tough time trying to figure out what to do next, because they'll probably get the NPCs will only get like 1 or 2 words out before they're bleeped. So it'll just be like bleep 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 to the town over there, bleep 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 bleep. And it's like because these wizards just start going, you know what, like that word, they're starting to create words to mean words. Flarfignugan actually means, beep, so we need to blur that. And then it just becomes like, well, they're saying this, and then So, but hey, you might like protecting your children from this stuff, and I do too, but you might be more on the extreme side of that. So, we will have a thematic argument in there that basically says, hey, words, if it protects our children, we should do anything. So, the villain in that sense would probably have a different point of view based on so I'm not even saying one argument's better than the other. I'm giving you the opportunity to say, hey, here's a subject.
And that's exactly what South Park does. It looks at things from all the different sides.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, like when I first started promoting this stuff, like there were some people who were like, I mean, on my promotion, I post and people would just be like, oh God, and then the post after would just say, oh, this is amazing. So I've been getting like, nothing but ambivalence. I mean, everything but ambivalence, that is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the duty humor, sex supplement. I mean, we're gonna go everywhere, but like I said, I mean, bestiality is
the succubus source book.
Absolutely, yeah. Why not? We have creatures like the half hippogriff, because my dad had an affair with a hippogriff. I mean, why not? I mean, there's so many half things in D&D that like you got to wonder like what's going on here. This is like a racial gangbang. I mean, there's half elves, half dwarves, half like and racial humor for sure, drug humor. Like we have spices and herbs in the world, and people get high on these spices and herbs, and it's just the same thing. So we're just providing like a playground that kind of has a little bit of everything. So even if you want to parody technology, well, the Atlanteans are the only high-tech civilization on the planet, and they're magical technology, so that's why they kind of got sucked in. So you can even some of the stuff South Park does is crazy, but the more you analyze it, you're like, wow, that's actually brilliant. That they're like they have a dancing, singing Christmas poo. So and they won Emmys. Like okay, so and they also have like I remember there was one episode where like Mr. Garrison had a bicycle that he had to ride by basically pretending to take, genitalia from every side and in every hole, and that's how you ride this bike. So I'm sorry if there's an audience for South Park and gamers do have a sense of humor. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. So I'm just hoping that maybe people will just be interested, and even if it's a leap of faith a little bit because I'm trying to do something. Castle Greyhawk, I looked it up. Somebody mentioned that like in a negative slant, like oh my God, I'm seeing Castle Greyhawk again. But I mean, I remember it. I started reading through it. I was like, wow, this is terrible. I could totally understand why somebody would just realize but what they did was they hired 12 different writers and they wrote completely different adventures with no thought. It's just they did what I don't want to do. I'm not going to create an adventure that's just here's a silly stupid creature, here's another silly stupid idea, here's another. I mean, I want to have a theme, to tackle subjects. So it'll be raunchy and edgy, but with some thought behind it.
There's actually going to be a story there.
Right, and like the Castle Greyhawk thing was just like, wow. I mean, it was an insult to gamers almost. It's almost like saying, hey, we'll just, we're gonna lampoon ourselves, and in the meanwhile, just like because we're lampooning, that gives us license to just not put effort or to just, hey, it's just a stupid. It's just same thing with superhero movies. Back when superhero movies first started coming out, they were like, oh, this is a comic book, so we're not gonna adhere to it too much. We're not gonna treat it seriously. We're not gonna, we're just gonna lampoon it, or we're just gonna do whatever we can. Like they don't care if fan people, they just put the name on there and that's it. That's what I feel like. Greyhawk and some other these other, and here's the thing: there are plenty of other really funny and cool, aside from Toon and Paranoia, comedy games out there, role playing games. A handful of indies, a bunch of them actually, Fluffy Quest and stuff like that. They're really funny, and some of them are even kind of edgy. A couple come to mind, but none of them dare to do what I mean. Me and my friends, we've been doing stand-up comedy. I've been booed off stage at I've been not booed. I bombed at the Comedy Store, and comedians have no ego. You can't practice. You can practice music in your basement till you're perfect, and then you can go on stage. But comedy has to be practiced in front of an audience. So you go to an open mic night, you tell a joke that's horrible or offensive. I remember doing a whole show of all over 60 accountants, and I started doing my Christploitation bit, where I stick Christ in as many movies as I could. Like Three Men and a Baby Jesus or Messiah's 13, and they were looking at me like they were going to lynch me. So I switched over to my 5-hour energy drink, meth jokes, and everybody loved it.
Yeah. I was about 17 years ago, I was a stand-up comic in Indianapolis, and I was the comics comic where for the first half of my career, the whole first three quarters of the room was silent, and it was all the comics in the back who were dying laughing, which was just the weirdest dichotomy there.
Well, there have been a lot of great comedians comics, like Larry David.
Mm-hmm.
He's a comedian's comic. And it's better that than Dane Cook. Better that than the audience loves you, but comics don't respect you.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking it being an adult game, so that just leads to the ultimate question. Do you have alternate rules for playing while drinking? Do you have the drinking game rules to add into it?
Yeah. There's we have we also we have a drinking game added into it. That's going to come with the drug supplement. Optional rules. It's all the drugs and just like, again, we're just going to tackle subjects, and we have like a drug humor adventure called Beer and Loathing in the Labyrinth, which is fear and loathing meets Labyrinth and the Minotaur. And then we also came up with some interesting stuff. Again, we're going to go places that I've never seen before, and maybe they're out there, but I personally, or we haven't kind of seen it go, especially from a comedic point of view. We have a Medieval Madness section in the main book where you could play a character with OCD. You could play a character with, and now we're going to try and be as reverential as we can with, the actual, these are real life mental issues and stuff. But some of them are just, it's funny. So at the end of the day, like Tourette's, playing a character with Tourette's and having like rules or, the ability to, there's objectophilia. When you have no limits, you have so much more that, like there's so many stereotypical games I've played that this is at least not stereotypical. Yeah.
If you're going to go there, you go all the way on that. There's no halfway about it.
Right. Otherwise, why? Well, right. Otherwise, you're just like everybody else. And there are plenty of other games that are out there that aren't going to go there, that are probably more thought out. They've been around longer, and there's a market, and they're being satisfied. But there's somebody out there like you and me who's loves stand-up comedy and loves gaming, and not even necessarily stand-up comedy, but just loves South Park or irreverent humor, Howard Stern, Mad Magazine,
Adult Swim stuff.
Adult Swim, yeah. So this is a niche product, definitely. But I think there is a niche.
There definitely is. So, very interesting things also, and very, very neat ideas. Like looking at that Jester class that you talked about earlier, I was amazed by how much thought you put into the alignment issues on it, of how it shows how it avoids a one-dimensional look at the classes by showing this guy responds this different way if he has this alignment. Why do you think alignment matters in this kind of a comedy game?
Well, I think alignment is important, especially in comedy, because comedy and especially like in what sort of would be an ensemble picture if this was a movie, a D&D game. The banter, the characters, the way they communicate with each other, is a huge source of potential comedy and just fun. So giving people an opportunity to look at their characters, especially when each adventure is sort of going to tackle a subject. It would be good for the players to know right away what is the starting position for my opinion of this character. It could change throughout the adventure, but at least like, and well, that would be specifically to the adventure, but for each individual character as well. Once you have established sort of like a guide, a moral or some kind of alignment guideline, then playing off of each other for comedic purposes becomes more clear. And I want to give more information about that. So a chaotic neutral person maybe in the dynamic of the group for comedic purposes could do this or this, just ideas to spark what, like, from that point of view psychologically. I could think of some comedians that I know that are chaotic neutral. If I started putting stand-up comedians with alignments, I could definitely come up with, well, hey, this person here is, lawful, is very structured, very organized,
Are you a
very.
fan of MST3K?
Absolutely, yeah, perfect
Did
example
you
of
see a
parody.
Turkey Day? Did you see the Turkey Day when Joe came on and said, "Hi, I'm Joe Hodson, and I am chaotic neutral"?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know what? Chaotic neutral, especially when you put it in a point of view of like comedy, chaotic neutral is much more. Oh, every alignment becomes much more fun because if you're the lawful good guy, then maybe you're the butt of the joke. Maybe you're the guy. Maybe you're the straight man. And once you
Well,
know that you're the straight man, then maybe it's gonna be funner for you to roll with it.
in alignment, I mean, if you didn't have alignment, you wouldn't have buddy cop movies.
Absolutely.
That's all about alignment fun.
Absolutely. I agree. And also in Beasties and Bygones, just for fun and for parody's sake, we've actually created also, aside from alignment, to give you something else to play off of, we have every character has a zodiac sign.
Hmm.
And because in my world, the astrology was sucked into this world and it's magical. And what happens is, instead of there just being one god, Leo, or the god that Leo is a god, it's actually a seat. So there are 12. The council of the zodiac council is 12 gods that are currently ruling reality. And
Hmm.
so if certain gods like Penitor or Hermaphrodite or any of these silly gods that I created, they might take the Leo seat and then they rule over anybody who's Leo. And then so that gives me a way to sort of parody alignment because I want to take everything and sort of flip it on its side. And again, this is optional, but within the world it's there. You don't have to create your character's alignment or follow by it, and I'm not going to stick too much by it, but it'll just be another guideline. If say alignment was like who you are, then maybe your sign might be how you are, kind of thing. So,
Okay.
and it's something we already know. So, and if we don't know a lot of it, at least we know something of it.
So you're saying you got stories, you've got structure, you've got themes. With a lot of comedy games, or when regular games break down into comedy, it becomes basically the players just messing around with in a set piece and the story not advancing. What tools do you have in your setting rules and stuff to can advance the stories and for stories to be told while the comedy still gets to happen?
Good question, and I definitely think that's important to note. All of our adventures, the ones that we write, and are the information we're going to give in the book to help you write these sort of adventures, is we're all in a three-act structure. So all television shows, and I mean, going back through ancient Greece, the three-act structure has been around. So we're basically using a structure that allows for it's not complete structure. So you'll have encounters within Act 1, encounters within Act 2, and encounters within Act 3. But each encounter will escalate. Those encounters in Act 2 are going to be the stakes are going to be higher, and then the encounters in Act 3, the stakes will be even higher. But let's say your players are going on too long and joking around on a set piece, and you really got to get this thing moving. We have what we call plot points. We call them plot twists, actually. Plot twist 1, and this is based on screenwriting structure. Plot twist 1, plot twist 2, and we also have a hook, and then a resolution. But the main three important ones are plot point 1, plot twist 1, plot twist 2, and the resolution. And so your players are running crazy. Well, you want to move the story along. Well, every adventure is written from the point of view of the villain as the main character. And he's doing whatever he's doing, no matter what you're doing. So if you're wasting time, something's going to happen. So you as a game master have the opportunity to try and take control of your story by saying, hey, plot point 1 just happened. We're going to have a list of different possible plot point 1s depending on the type, depending on the theme of your story. We're going to have 3 different thematic questions for every adventure. So if you're on one side of a subject, if you as a game master want the villain to present one side of the subject and see if the other players end up presenting the other side of the subject. But all encounters throughout our games are going to be related to the theme and the subject of our adventure, and thus either be on one side or the other, opposing or agreeing with that thematic question that the players won't know. Point is, though, they're going along too long. Plot point 1, you look at the adventure, plot point 1, oh, I'll choose this one. Okay, it looks like, in the censorship adventure, looks like another law has passed that it's and now it 3 strikes and the thought police or a spell that now says, hey, your thinking now is under a rule. If you think a bad word, you're going to get. So if you sit around too much, the GM will have an opportunity to have these plot twists that'll just change the direction of the story instantly and keep the players on their toes. And that'll also signify to you, okay, I'm on to Act 2. Now my encounters are going to be escalated. So you have in your head, where am I? Am I in the beginning of the story, Act 1, the middle of the story, Act 2, or am I towards the end of the story, Act 3? And should I be based on time, based on what has happened throughout the story? But yeah, we've definitely put in enough structure and enough tools for game masters to be able to control if the players go out of if all the players become Daffy Duck for 2 hours.
So talking about time, is this built to be done where each adventure can be done in a single session? Is it built to take your time at your own pace through it? Or we keep talking back to the tune where they actually had a ticking clock where you have an intermission after so many minutes and the game must end at a certain point to kind of force the 8-minute cartoon theme into it.
Gotcha. Oh, it's a little bit of both there. Well, what I've done is the adventures that I'm creating are going to be basically just, and if you know Dungeon World, you'll know this is sort of how they do things. It's a little less structured, but I'm kind of doing a melding of structure and no structure. So now there's some structure, but it's in buckets. So, you have a bucket for 3.5. You have a bucket of encounters. Now, I think it depends on, it'll be adjustable, I guess is the best way to put it. So let's say you have 4 hours to play. You have plenty of encounters before you hit that plot point 1. But you might say, I want to drop that plot point 1 after an hour because we have 3 hours to play, so I'm going to designate so much time. You want to actually sort of have a schedule in your head when you do these, because you want to say, well, in natural 3-act structure, Act 1, if Act 1 is 30 minutes, then Act 2 is 60, and Act 3 is 30. So that's the structure. If you change however long you want Act 1 to be, try and make Act 2 match it, and Act 3 match it, and Act 2 be twice as long. And that is just going to be at your control completely with these plot twists. So maybe you can fit in, if you guys are faster. In 3.5, it might be a little bit more difficult to get more encounters in because combat sometimes can get bogged up. But I'm definitely going to give suggestions for, hey, if you have this much time, I can have the amount of time in general it takes to do these encounters. Timing in comedy is important. I mean, when you're doing stand-up, in comedy in general, I mean, a pause between one word and another is the joke.
Yes.
So a pause between and moving along the story in a 3-act structure, again, is of the utmost importance. So I think it's gonna be. I imagine though that I'd like people to be able to play it in one sitting. I definitely think it's a con game, and I'm gonna have at least enough encounters to have a meaty tackling of that subject and a nice adventure within 4 hours. Within 4 hours, that's my goal. But I think that you could stretch it if you wanted to, by adding some of these other encounters. But like I said, once plot point 1 goes down, certain things aren't going to be available. I mean, of course, you can do what you want. These are all suggestions. But the encounters that I had in Act 1 were meant to be in Act 1. And if you bring them into Act 2, then you do whatever you want. But that's not what we have in playtesting and trying to set up. So that way, you can tell yourself, all right, the story's moving along. This stuff either happened or it didn't. That's it. The next stuff, it has to move the story forward. And that's why I'm also using a technique that South Park, Matt Trey and Matt Parker and Matt Stone and Trey Parker They came up with this that they attribute to all of their writing. It's something called but therefore. And so when you're outlining a story, you say in between. You can't say and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. That's you're dead in the water. But if you say this happened, but this happened, therefore this happened, but this happened, then therefore, then everything. When you write the outline of it, everything is building towards something, and everything moves. In the story, it's forced to move because you've got these but and therefores instead of just arbitrary things happening. Random encounter number 1, random encounter number 2, random encounter number 3. Like that's
everything. Everything is a consequence of the initial action.
Cause and effect, right? And the players have more control. If they do this, it goes this way, almost like adventure. Choose your own adventure. But that way, the stories that I would like to play are always moving. Every encounter, if you choose one from Act 2, it is built to move the story forward, no matter what encounter or how many encounters you had in Act 1.
They're not just things to kill to get XP to get you to a higher level so that you're ready to face the villain.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
reasons for it all.
Right, and what's kind of cool as a player is if you can spot out, and you'll be able to spot out, just like in movies. If you really look for it, you'll be able to spot the plot points or the plot twists. But it is kind of cool to know, hey, I'm in Act 1, I'm in Act 2 as a player. Like, oh, okay, in this story, because we're all collaborative storytellers. So now, that gives you a sense of where I'm at, where my character is in the story. You might role play differently. And also, you'll know how close to because a game could go for 10 hours, and I've been at games where you just don't know when this game is going to end. It's almost like, we'll go for 5 hours and then just drop a boss on you, and that's it. Like, I mean, and that's fun too for hack and slash. But there's plenty of games like that out there, so I don't want to create another game just like that.
Mm-hmm. So when you've been playtesting, this is one thing with your buddies who are comedians and are good at interacting with each other, but when you're putting this in a con setting or a beta test where you've got a couple guys who are good at picking up on what you're doing and playing off each other, doing voices and being goofy in it, but then the couple of people who are the more type of gamers who are more reserved and are having a little more fun watching this, is there a way to get them more involved, or even encountered what Robin Luss is trying to get them more involved into the comedy, even if they're not comfortable with that? How do you get them enjoying the game? Because it seems like everybody should be contributing comedically in this type of environment.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, part of it I think would be, playing this, the advice I'd give to any player: play this straight. Your character wants to live. It isn't a cartoon as much as the best satire and parody. Spaceballs characters thought they could die, and if they didn't, I don't know if the movie would have any weight behind it. So somebody who doesn't necessarily have that comedic stuff coming to, especially at a con, we don't know that many people. Well, I demoed this game for two sets of complete strangers at Gen Con this year. We've been going for the last 3 years supporting our web series, Game Nights, and I was surprised. I was very nervous because I never, like I said, I didn't know these people, but I definitely put in the event schedule. It said raunchy parody role playing, not for the weak I mean, basically, not for kids. And the first thing that two people said when they showed up was, "There are no kids, right?" Yeah. Okay, cool. I want to play a satyr, and I told them, well, in our world, satyrs have to have sex every 7 years, or they'll go into a frenzy. So he came up with the idea. Well, it's been not 7 years. Sorry, 7 days. It makes a big difference. It's not pon far. Not pon far. So the whole adventure, he ended up just trying to get laid with the waitress, and that's fine. If that's what he wants to do, that's fine. I mean, there are characters in stories that do that. Porthos. I mean, in other words, so basically, I wouldn't tell the players to try and be necessarily funny. If you're the guy who thinks play, but I will be giving you tools, and what I'll be giving was either it's actions like attacks that are funny or silly, spells that are parodies. There's plenty of comedy built in also to hopefully just when you see a new monster, you're gonna laugh. But then also, like I was saying before, if you are the person who is more reserved, then maybe you want to play the straight guy. Maybe you want to be, maybe you want to take on the role of not everybody. You don't want a whole group of just over the top, like, people making nonstop Spider-Man comments.
Hmm.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, I hope that people won't have too much pressure for the comedy, and that's why I actually changed it. It's more accurate to say it's a parody game, because the comedy, parody is a type of comedy, and when I say parody, it doesn't insinuate that you have to be funny. You just have to play your character. Not all characters in even Men in Tights are funny. Some of them are the butt of the joke. Some of them are just narrative. I will find ways to encourage somebody to be funny within the game, even if they're not. And mostly that's just going to be either through bonds, which in Dungeon World I'm adopting to the 3.5 version, and that is every adventure. Everybody's going to have to pick a sentence that basically, it's listed there thematically, a bunch of them, or you can make your own up. But it'll say something like, for the Jester class, it says like, blank never laughs at my jokes. I'll change that. So you pick somebody in the group and you say, this character never laughs at my jokes. I'll change that. And throughout the whole adventure, try and get them to laugh. And then and think it, in other words, once it's almost like reality television. When you put people in a room together, give them exact opposite points of views, give them like enough drama, it's going to get funny. People are, people are going to be, it might say, hey, prankster. If you play a prankster character, then right off the bat, like, but not everybody's going to laugh. If you're the butt of the joke, you might not laugh. The point is, hopefully, that just you're going to laugh whether you make other people laugh or not. At the end of the day, it's a collaborative storytelling, and laughing is important, but storytelling is fun, and just doing whatever you want. I don't want to force people to have to be funny. So don't worry so much. Just the game master is the storyteller. He's going to present funny stuff, and hopefully you'll like it. And not everything's going to be hysterical too. Sometimes it'll just be clever. Sometimes it'll just be cute. Sometimes it'll just be interesting.
Excellent. So, what have you learned from your experience with stand-up comedy that you have applied to your DMing? So when I did stand-up years ago, I mean, I was tied to the script, to the routine. In my first years in GMing, I did a Star Wars Dawn of Defiance, the Star Wars Saga campaign, and I literally have a 2,000-page binder of contingency that I'd carry with me. And only after cutting my teeth with that and Tune and Paranoia did I really get to a point where I feel comfortable improvising and going off script and responding, which would have made me a totally different comic if I ever got back into it. What have you learned?
Well, for one thing, I've learned a lot. I've actually I have a comedy, a friend of mine. Her name's Bobby Oliver. She's awesome out here in LA, and she has a philosophy on comedy that I've studied. She has a book out called The Tao of Comedy, and it kind of breaks everything down. And but to just be concise here, I would say first thing I learned is timing being key. Embrace the pause. If people, the first problem people have when they go up, including myself for the first time doing stand-up, is they talk too fast. And I think that's the same thing in gaming. If you're the game master, then you're going to want to a well-placed pause is going to be key, and that goes with the timing. Secondly, I've learned that editing, when it comes down to, especially and I've applied that to the narration of the story, like whatever you might have to read out of the adventure book, editing it down for comedic punches, basically whatever stripping it down to its bare essentials to tell the joke, or to tell the story in this case. And then also just landing on the funny, structure your jokes, structure it so that the last thing is the funniest. And in general, we have this structure for stand-up where you write one chunk. They call it in chunks. So what you say is, here's one set of jokes that I have, and they're all about marriage. Well, my marriage chunk, the first joke in that chunk is going to be the second funniest joke I have. And the last joke in that chunk is going to be the funniest, and then everything else is going to be my B or C material, so that I start strong and I end stronger. So that's just a handful of things that I've learned. There really is a lot more. The reason why it translates so well is because when you're game mastering or you're playing, you are, because stand-up comedy is edited words for speaking. Now, when you're reading a book, David Sedaris could be brilliant with extraneous vowels, extra
Hmm.
words, because you could go back and read it and reprocess it if it didn't hit you the first time. It's at your own pace. But you're in a comedy club and people are eating and drinking and ordering drinks, and you got to uh, you have to feed a baby bird. You have to give him one notion. You can't blur the point. If the joke is about this, then you keep it to that. So I think that and the fact of just performing the stand up. On a side note, this year was the funnest year ever at Gen Con because I played those two games. Because it's what I'm talking about. It's just a
Hmm.
thrill to make people laugh, to go up in front of especially strangers, and in my case, and in most people's cases, tell the most embarrassing jokes or stories that you would never tell people, friends of yours, to strangers. It's powerful too because you feel like, you know what, I can do anything. But at the same time, there's also a vulnerability there. And then I loved gaming.
That's what my wife said. She says she's gone through every single kind of entertainment there performance art there is, and stand up is the most revealing yourself, the most intimate to the audience that she ever saw.
It's just you and the mic, and there's no screenwriter, there's no storyteller, there's nobody in between, and you're staring them down. And let me tell you, public speaking is the number one fear, above death. Public
Hmm.
speaking. Add to that the expectation to make somebody laugh. The pressure, it can be pretty crazy. When I was gaming, when I was running these games at Gen Con, I felt like I had the best of both worlds because I remember running games when I was younger and I had a lot more time and stuff. And even last month when I was running it, you get such a thrill from running a game, and then you get a different thrill from doing stand up. So when I did them both last year for the first time to people that I've never met, I was like on cloud nine. I was just like, wow, this is so much fun. And people had so much fun. And along the way, they felt like they could do whatever. That was part of it. A player's freedom, like, and to not be judged either. And here's what's interesting. Like, for the second game, we had a lesbian couple,
Hmm.
and one of them played a man, and the other one played a woman. But she played a gay man, and she started hitting on the male bartender. So here I am role playing, like, it's surreal but so much fun. Like, she just knew, and everybody who just knew just showed up and said, I can do whatever I want. Like, and nobody's gonna be like, hey, that's stupid, you're destroying my game, or you know how much, blah blah blah. It's just like, okay, what do you want to do? Like, and then other people were laughing. When we get together and there's no expectation to make somebody laugh, we make each other laugh. Like when you play a D&D game, you make people laugh here and there. So I just realized that people just want to have fun and be free. And at the cons, I was surprised that people were so open and so much fun when they didn't know each other. So that's why I feel like having this game is almost like saying this is a playground, this is a safe zone.
Yeah.
And in a comedy club, it's the same thing. Like a comedy club is sacred. Like you can say anything. Now people don't have to like you for saying it. I mean, it's not, people aren't, you can say it, but it's complete freedom. It's just you and a mic. Say whatever you want. And so in this game, I feel like people show up and they're like, hey, this is that raunchy game, right? Okay, cool. I want to be this, or I want to do that. And if I did this in somebody else's game, they'd be pissed at me. But I want to do it.
Hmm.
So that's what Beasties and Bygones is for, is to satisfy just that raunchy urge that I have all the time. I mean, I'm jaded. Part of what, like you said, is being being in comedy, you hear so much stuff, you get jaded. My sense of humor happens to be partially offensive sometimes, over the top, either silly or just insane. So, am I a bad person? I don't think so. Maybe, but for different reasons, man.
And my last question that kind of brings us all together, man. Where has the humor gone in general in role playing? It's certificates and organized plays. Where is the gathering and having beer
That's
and
right.
pretzels? Where is the beer, the pretzels, and the laughter?
I feel like that is happening more often on like Roll20 or like online. I feel like that's why this would be a good game for that. If you haven't played in a long time and you have your friends and you've grown up and you have wives and you have kids and you can't get together, but you can get together once in a while for like an online game. Well, you're at your own home. You're in your own home. You say whatever you want when you're in your own home. So now you have a game that'll. So, but I think that you have a point there. here's the thing. Like again, I love seriousness, and I believe that things have to be taken seriously from the back end. Like in other words, like playtesting. That. But when it comes to actually playing the game, like not creating it. I mean, it's supposed to be fun.
Hmm.
I know what you're saying. But people take it too seriously, and I think it could be just you know possibly a lack of control in life. Like I know I play D&D, especially growing up a lot. When because there's some things you can't control in this world, and when you play D&D, you can be somebody else, and you can do anything, and you can, you know, you're not constrained by anything. So I feel like
But
it's
even
just
then, if you're doing that, I mean, I've seen as a DM and a player so many times of you're building a character based on what you want to build into your character, and you're told you're making the wrong decisions. You're not
yeah,
min
yeah,
maxing. You're not
you're
taking
right.
the right
Yeah.
feats or the right powers, but that you're trying to make the character you just want to play.
Okay, well, you know what? And just by you saying that, it sort of hit me. It's because it's become competitive and not collaborative.
Mm.
And competitive storytelling is not. It couldn't be an interesting thing to watch. I mean, to watch, you know, somebody try and out tell a story, or you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, if we're all in if it's all about min maxing, then you're talking about like I can do this better than you, and that's not art. And what I believe role playing is art, and art is subjective. So once you start classifying and quantifying and saying, well, I need to make my character stack up, and I need 3 more points here and 5 more points there, otherwise my character's not complete. Then and this probably isn't the game for you. I mean, maybe though, because we are putting in a we are doing a thing where we're going to put like rules lawyers into the game. So we have this idea that we're working on, and it's a basically kind of like a meta game where each player would take a card, and it's almost done, and hopefully it'll be done by the time the Kickstarter is done. But we've created 5 character classes for the players playing the game in Game Nights, our web series. So there's and some of them are classic, like the real role player. Then there's the strategist. Then there's the loony, who just does whatever. The rules lawyer, and so these are archetypes of gamers, and so
Hmm.
we created these cards that will people could like choose, that'll have like a character sheet for your player playing Beasties and Bygones to go up in level as well, and then he'll have like abilities that he can affect the game from outside the game. So even if you are a rules play lawyer, with this expansion and some of these other optional rules that we have, we'll have the ability to actually, incorporate your point of view on rules lawyering into the game, because this is even a parody of the game itself. So it's sort of
That's
like hack
hilarious.
in a way, but taken to the next level.
Cool. And how can people see the game night show? Where do they see this?
Well, if you go to criticalhitmedia.com or our Kickstarter page, all the way at the bottom. So if you do a search on Kickstarter for Beasties and Bygones, that's the name of the game. It's a play on Dungeons and Dragons B&B. And if you could all the way at the bottom, we have the first 10 minutes up. Our main character, we have a bunch of great comedians. One of our main actors, he was on American Horror Story. He's a black albino comedian, hysterical guy, Nathan, and he plays his animated character, because Game Nights is half cartoon, half live action, and so the characters who sit around playing D&D every week, or B&B that is, actually they voice their animated characters throughout the adventures. So unlike most like web series, it's kind of ADD style, jumps back and forth between animation and real life, and we get to explore what these people in real life, why they play this game. For example, like Nathan's character in the game, he has 2 strikes, one more strike, and he goes to jail for a long time. And he has 2 strikes for doing stupid stuff like paintballing a cop car, or just really silly, sort of like loony stuff. And so it turns out he has this, he goes to a psychiatrist and he says, hey, he's court ordered. Walks in, the psychiatrist like, you know what? It looks like you're having problems channeling your random thoughts or your aggressions or your impulses. So let's do some clinical role playing. He's like, role playing? I already role play. I'm Frodo the Archer once a week. He's like, oh, I know what you're saying, twice a week. So he hugs him and runs out the door. So he plays the game because he's channeling all these impulses through the game so that he doesn't go to jail. And so in the game, he plays a black hobbit named Afrodo, and he keeps his arrows in his hair. Afrodo the Archer, and so like we created these archetypes. He's the loony, so he, I believe that everybody gets something different from games. Like the real role player woman, she's in real life, she's actually a stripper. But in the game, and she's also like a Renaissance fair type. She loves all that kind of stuff, romance. But in real world, she's objectified. But in the game, she's married with a baby, and she rides a unicorn. She's married to the game master, and the game master has a crush on her, but they're just friends. So he's always kind of in the game. She's always finding gold or getting extra change back that she doesn't get, or magically she never gets attacked, or he's always trying to hit on her throughout the game, and so it's kind of this fun playing on the archetypes. And so in Beasties and Bygones, we'll have this optional rule that'll let you not just play your character, but play the player playing the character.
That's hilarious. So Beasties and Bygones, so right as of right now, it's like $300 from becoming completely funded, and lots of great things to be added on Kickstarter. Thank you, Javier, for joining us, and best of luck, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the interview, and I'll keep in touch. And threats from the Galfrey.
Threats from Gallifrey. And I will hit stop.